Hello everyone, welcome back to Pris Corner with me Pris. I hope you're okay wherever you are. Today on What's Real Not episodes, I am discussing another new Japanese comic / manga series titled Super Darling. This series was created by Aya Shoto, which only contains 2 volumes. So basically this is a short series. And if you want to know more about this series, I will leave the details in the link in the description box below. And if you want to support me further, I will leave the link in the description box below as well. So, I already concluded the series based on 70% fantasy, then 5% gray area, and lastly 20% real. Again, this is only based on my opinion and perspective, so feel free to disagree. And as per usual, we'll start with the fantasy part, then move on to the gray area, and lastly on the real part. So let's jump right into what's real or not episodes today. Okay, so the fantasy part, that's make up about 70% of the series. We'll start off with firstly the school itself, the Takamagara Academy, an elite and prestigious academy that basically help to develop student talents regarding their specializations like professional athlete or scientists or professional musicians and singer and etc. I don't know, maybe because I don't have a lot of experiences, I don't think this is relatable to reality because I never found school that good, and basically the school never getting a lot of spotlight because of their good system and things like that, like in Orange Club. Maybe because this is only a short series, that's why I put it in the fantasy part. And then secondly is about the legend of 1,000-year-old Sakura tree. Well, even though it's basically turns out to be made up by Nagi Kasemachi, but I just think like why people so believe in that legend, I guess. It's some kind of myth that's speculated around. And then the whole circumstances with our main protagonist and our main cast, basically, like the end of the world and then time travel and things like that. That's why I put it in the fantasy part, because a lot of it's fantasy. But thirdly, the supporting cast, mostly the other students don't have any faces whatsoever, and they always basically go along and support the main cast basically. I think it's rarely they really like have bad intention toward the main cast, even the main protagonist. Well, because they cannot see her, so maybe that's why it seemed like a little bit bad behavior, but they don't see her, so you cannot blame them in any way. Besides, they are only a supporting cast. And lastly, maybe on the fantasy part is basically the attributes or traits from the main cast itself. I think for our main protagonist is pretty okay, even though basically about the special talent of being invisible is kind of questioning, even though it's basically kind of get answered in the end that it was again Nagi Kasemachi is the one who behind that, why she became invisible because of like some cloak of basically time or time loop clock basically that basically cover her so people cannot see her, and the only one who can see her is her family and then the main cast. But that thing get answered, I guess. So the main protagonist is okay. I think the main cast is just like, well, even though we already know that Nagi is the one who behind that basically managed to manipulate their past, so their past becoming even more tragic, so they becoming even more motivated to build up their career. Even so, it's so a little bit over, and over the top and exaggerated, because basically they famous to to the sky or basically outer planets. And it's just kind of like okay, gonna building a company at 4 years old. That's pretty young. I mean, like that's impossible unless if you're basically genetically being created, in science lab. Then maybe possible like artificial human or something like that. That may be possible. But I think for normal people, mostly, I don't think it's possible. So yeah, that's basically the fantasy part, I guess. And then we move on to the gray area. Like I said in the preview and trial episode before, I think like about the time loop basically, and then the end of the world and things like that. I don't think they really explain that really detailed, but like they said about the butterfly effect and things like that. I think that's a pretty good explanation, even though it's not in detail, it's only in theory, and we just basically kind of have to suck with it and just accepting the explanation that's being given by the author. But it's okay. I think it's still possible to happen because of the butterfly effect, and then manage to become the end of the world, because it's the same cases. If you know Danganronpa, yeah, it's the same cases with that, the same pattern, like the butterfly effect, The first, I think the first one is the riot start in school and then move on into bigger scale. So the battle between the poor and the rich, things like that. So I think that's pretty possible about the butterfly effect, that maybe potentially become the end of the world just because of one regrets or something like that, or one small actions that people take can have a huge impact. That's why you have to be wise in making decisions and take actions, And then maybe secondly, on the gray area, it's just about the coincidence when basically all of the main cast basically met up at the Kamagara Academy. I mean, like, well, compared to real life, well, they could choose another academy. Why they basically drawn to it, or maybe because Nagi manipulated everything behind the scenes. That's why they made up in the academy. Well, that may be possible, because even the supercomputer that Shiki Tsukiyomi has can be manipulated with Hacker, and Hacker is basically the grandfather of Terui, which is, well, that makes sense, that's possible, but I kind of feel like it's still in the gray area of it. But well, pretty well, this is the story, and let's just enjoy it anyway. But I'm done to pick apart here, because this is what's real not sections anyway. And then lastly, we have the real part that make up about 20%, so the rest of the series. I think the things that you can see as real basically is the experiences that the main cast had, basically their past experiences, what they're dealing with, their insecurities, vulnerabilities, their feelings about it, and how they handle it is one of the things that's, I think, real, because if you are put in their shoes or in their condition, you would basically feel the same, Like I already explained to you in the preview, like Shiki Tsukiyomi and Teru Hanamiya, almost the same. Like they are basically find it hard to basically find it hard to trust other people around them, especially because, for example, Shiki is being expected a lot by a lot of other people, so he kind of feel pressured, to fulfill people expectation, because people expected him to be outstanding and genius and things like that. And on the other hand, basically Terui, people basically look down on him, put him down, like he's so useless and worthless, and he doesn't have any basically good traits on him and things like that, and or basically the good capability in leading the Hanamiya families. So they kind of has a similar experiences, but in opposites, and how they handle it or how they cope with that situation is different, and that makes the way they are right now. Basically, that's why they sometimes got into argument, because I think the underlying core is the same, because they have some kind of trust issue toward other people. It just basically Teru just kind of cope with it by being an easygoing person, while Siki is becoming stoic and cold person and not let anyone else near him. I think Terry doesn't let anyone near him too, but in context like he is friendly, but it's not easy basically for you to get his heart in some way. And then we move on to the other main case, basically about Nagi and Kanata. I think the underlying core is different. Their underlying core is basically about freedom. For example, Kanata want to basically have a normal life. He wants to make decision to live a normal life and enjoying his life basically, but he doesn't want to disappoint her mother. I think Nagi also has the same feelings, because he already know the end of the world and things like that, and he basically pushes himself to go through with this, even though I think he doesn't want to disappear, but because the other scientists, and again Nagi is the youngest of the scientists, that being basically given the responsibility to prevent that the end of the world itself. So he kind of feel pressure to to basically fulfill the expectation and to prevent the end of the world itself. That's why he being sent back to the past, which is like he doesn't basically have a really freedom, to want to live. Like his purpose is just become a tool and just vanish after his mission is completed, and that's pretty sad, I think that's why I think both of them has the same underlying, because they don't want to basically disregard other people's hopes or expectations in them, but they basically push themselves too hard that they will basically become fall, into despair and sadness, in just accepting their fate somehow more easier than Siki and Terui, because I think if Siki and Terui in their position, they will try to fight, to have their own freedom, but Kanata and Nagi is different. They just kind of accepting things because they don't want to make other people disappointed in them, I guess. And that's a pretty good trait, to be honest, but sometimes if you have to remember that even though you want to basically preserve the harmony, you're still part of the harmony, so don't forget yourself, and basically don't put yourself lower than the others. Yourself and the other people's is the same top priority, but remember to prioritize yourself too, and not only other people, especially if you're the type of people who already prioritize other people a lot in their life, because it can build some resentment in your heart basically, and it would not end good, believe me. And yeah, I think that's all for the main cast. I think that's the real part of it anyway. I kinda in the way understand why they do the things that they do, and why they the way they are, like our main protagonist Sakuya also has some struggle with low self-esteem, because no one ever see you never get an acknowledgement from other people, so how could you basically have a confidence, because the only one who acknowledge you is only your family anyway, because human is social creature. We still need some acknowledgement from other people. It's basically one of the 5 needs that have to be fulfilled in this life, the self-actualization needs, I guess, and it's basically the top needs, I think that's understandable, but I remember in the first volume she basically managed to fight her fear and basically try to protect the other guy when the other guy being attacked by other classmates, especially guys in their classes that jealous of these 4 main casts. But she basically managed to protect them with her unlucky charm somehow, and I think that's pretty good enough because she is finally stepped out of her comfort zone in order to protect other people. There's a pretty good self growth in that. Overall, the character development is pretty nice for our main cast, even though the other parts is just basically a little bit here and there, not completed, I guess, in a way, maybe because it's a short series, so they just basically try to make it a full story as soon as possible, and maybe because of the pages is not enough. I really understand, but overall they offer a pretty good series and pretty good artwork and pretty good storyline, and also pretty good character anyway, pleasant to eye and pleasant to heart. That's all, I guess. I really like the series. That's why I give it a higher rating, I guess, in the review. If you don't know, please check out the in-depth review podcast in any other podcast platform that you listen in. And again, I think that's all for What's Real Not episodes today, and the moral value lessons of the series. I think I already mentioned that before in the review episode, but I'm gonna mention this again. I think accepting yourself the way you are, be brave, step out of your comfort zone once in a while, even though you just take a baby step or just testing the water, it's okay. Just try to step out of your comfort zone. Not everything's gonna be as bad as what you think in your head. Sometimes it's in your head, and maybe the real life or the reality is not as bad as you think. If it's turned out bad, maybe you're just unlucky, because I cannot guarantee anything, but I hope you will try again and again and again if you fail, because I did the same too. So I hope that for the people who are trying, they're not alone. Even myself, I'm still trying to step out of my comfort zone. And okay, I hope this is helpful to you, and hope you are enjoying my contents. Again, I'm sorry if there is wrong grammar and mispronunciations. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram if you want to know what kind of contents that I'm gonna be uploading, and don't forget to follow me on my KoFi page or also on any other podcast platform that you listen in, and hope to see you soon. Bye bye.